Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode I'll be discussing the 1996 contemporary adaptation of the classic William Shakespeare play Romeo and Juliet as directed by Baz Luhrmann. So now, before I get started with my review, I just want to give a big massive shout out to Level Fresh, who did, to be honest, request this review quite some time ago. I am catching up with all my review requests as I go along. I do apologise. There is just quite a few. I do promise I will get round to each and every single one of them as I go. Level Fresh is a YouTuber bringing together some great Minecraft gaming videos. And so if you do have some time, please do check out their channel. I will leave a link to the channel in the description below, and will also link a Level Fresh video to the end of this episode. So, moving on to the movie, this kind of brings us the classically tragic tale, is what it does, written by Shakespeare all of those years ago, with a modern flavour, bringing the story right up to date for a modern audience, but keeping the original words and pretty much most of the original elements that Shakespeare had, perhaps with a few kind of tweaks here and there. Instead of being set in that fair Verona, Italy, the movie is actually set in a place called Verona Beach, in a contemporary America. Instead of yielding swords, our players yield guns with canny names such as Sword and Dagger, which kind of give an interesting representation offered by a more modern setting, shall we say. So, in that, and just a note before I do continue, I kind of thought about, do I say I'm going to do spoilers now? But yeah, I will be giving spoilers. I can't really do this play without giving spoilers, but I will do it in keeping with the classic Shakespeare play. I don't want to kind of take for granted that everybody already knows how this play ends, and so I will give you the opportunity to switch off now, just in case. But for those of you who are perhaps not familiar with the tale already, but obviously are still avidly watching this review, thank you very much. And of course to everybody else also watching the review, thank you too. The movie itself does centre around the love of our title characters, Romeo, as played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and Juliet, as played by Claire Danes. A couple of, well, the classic star-crossed lovers, in fact, who are inexplicably drawn to each other. The problem, like so many families maybe, but the problem is that their families are bitter enemies. In fact, opposing crime lords in this version of the play. With a very kind of intense and brutal rivalry, Romeo being a Montague and Juliet being a Capulet means that their love is forbidden. Makes it ever the more intense though, doesn't it? And they do plan to meet up in a secret, stealing only moments with each other when they can, and ultimately arrange to be wed in secret. As the rivalry between the families continues to escalate, Romeo is drawn into an impossible fight with his unsuspecting in-laws, and as a result is banished from Verona Beach. Unbeknowing of their love and her betrothed, Juliet's family arranges for her to be married to somebody else, and in despair, Juliet arranges with the local priest and herbalist, Father Lawrence, as played by Postlethwaite, to fake her death in order to awake and escape to her Romeo. Yeah, quite intense. But, unfortunately, Romeo, the thing is, he doesn't quite get the message and thinks Juliet has indeed passed away for real. Not wanting to live without her Romeo, you know, and then he plans to join her in everlasting embrace, so to say. What then follows is simply one of the most tragic tales of love and desperation ever told. Never before has there been such a tale of more woe. If I've got that right. Yes, I'm not much of a Shakespeare aficionado, but I think that's what they say. So, firstly, just to say that this film has a very distinct and unique vision, and to say that would be an understatement, to be fair. What Luhrmann has created here is visually beautiful. The whole thing is a smart and indeed a sexy way, really, to bring Shakespeare to a modern audience. A new interpretation, if you like, for the ages, you know, to be sure. It was, in fact, I think, a bold move to put the traditional Shakespeare play into a modern context, and not just to kind of translate the story, but to actually use the language and words as Shakespeare intended, for the most part. It is extremely eccentric at times, and a bit offbeat, and there are more than a few colourful characters. For me, it does kind of take a while to get into it. It is one of those kind of films that I do have to fancy watching to really kind of sit there and really enjoy it, for what it is. I mean, it's hard going. It takes a bit of brain processing power to watch the film. It is Shakespeare after all, So to see this kind of wild and vibrant land of Verona Beach unfold at the start of the movie is very different, to say the least. And I do always kind of find it a bit odd and a little difficult to get used to. It's kind of in your face and a tad extreme when all's said and done. But it does set the tone very well for what's to follow. And it serves to kind of introduce us to each of the prominent players in its own unique way. So sticking to what, so sticking with it, does kind of bear fruit later on down the line. So, and that is, now, I don't mind admitting, when I was at school, English was never my best nor favourite subject. And learning Shakespeare was about the driest part of the subject for me, And as you can tell by the way I do some of these reviews, I get caught up quite a bit. So obviously English, it was never something that I sat down and really wanted to kind of inject my energy into. It kind of always conjured up images of dusty old books in dusty old rooms, being read by dusty old men, Not really very appealing to me, to say the least, at all, And I did kind of switch off. I must be honest, Then this film came along, and it opened my eyes to a whole new world. It gave me Shakespeare in a very accessible and relatable format. I knew of the story of Romeo and Juliet, of course. Mostly the juicy bits, like most, But I would suppose that I'd kind of never paid too much attention to it in its entirety, so to speak. And never as in-depth as this film does actually provide. And whilst, it's not a film that I do frequent very often, it is still one that I really do enjoy for what it actually brings to the table for me personally. And at least, and indeed, it proves that Shakespeare can still have relevance in a modern context. Now, I'm not saying that it's a masterpiece by any stretch, but you do kind of have to admire its sense of vision, and the boldness that it has. The outstanding visuals are used very succinctly, I think, to convey many of the emotions and emphasis the film has throughout, which means that even if you don't understand a word anybody is actually jabbering on about, you can still take something away from this film, which, tremendously opens its appeal. And indeed, that's exactly what it did when it was first released. The hype surrounding this movie was simply phenomenal. Now, I'm pretty sure most of that was aimed at DiCaprio, but either way, it resulted in this movie becoming a box office smash. I mean, I think overall, Luhrmann presents some of the tender moments in the movie very well, and indeed brings the rivalry of the two families to life in a very vibrant, forceful, and a bold way, which really makes it clear just how much at war they really are. The thing is, the rivalry might be intense, but the romance between Romeo and Juliet isn't perhaps as passionate as I would have thought it would have been, given the kind of drastic events that happen, towards the end of the story. I think DiCaprio and Danes, they did a reasonable job, and sure, the film is very romantic, but I think they just lack that spark required to really make us believe, There just don't seem to be any of that raw energy required for such a distinctive and iconic roles, in my opinion, at least. They don't completely hash it up, they don't completely hash up the most memorable moments, not at all. Love knows no limits and no bounds, especially in Shakespeare. It's just, I would say that the kind of the chemistry between DiCaprio and Danes, it does kind of feel a little bit awkward, if you know what I mean. But along with the music and the Shakespeare's way with words, it's competent enough. And it does get the job done and at least build up the tension and expectation for the end finale, which I've got to say had me on the edge of my seat with expectation, even though I knew what was coming. Whichever way you look at it, or whoever's playing it, it is simply tragic. It is still a shocking ending, no matter which way you play it. Some of the supporting cast are superb, however, and quite the presence in the film, I did think. Now, I'm going to have trouble saying his name. John Leguizamo. John Leguizamo. That guy. The guy from Mario Brothers. Who he does play Juliet's cousin, Tybalt. He does look like he's putting every last drop of energy into his role. You know, the disdain that he has for Romeo looks all too real. You know, it is brilliant. Pete Postlethwaite also gives a very heartfelt performance as Father Lawrence, giving it the sense of kind of decorum, but just that kind of quirky edge, you know, that the role commands. Furthermore, the other two roles that I thought really commanded presence were, and again, I'm going to get stuck here, Harold Perrineau as Mercutio, Romeo's best friends, or one of Romeo's best friends, and Miriam Margolyes as Nurse, no other name, Juliet's nanny. Both were totally eccentric indeed. Also Perrineau, but added some much needed jubilance, I thought, in relation to the proceedings. A little odd, quirky, but if you know what I mean, I think the overall presentation really befit having a number of really outlandish characters. I think that's the way this should have been, and that they got that right. Lastly, something definitely worth a mention is, of course, the soundtrack. This has kind of been created as like a mix of classical and contemporary music, kind of turned and twisted to fit with the bold and the vibrant nature of the movie overall. Equal parts imposing and equal parts spellbindingly beautiful. The soundtrack bolsters Luhrmann's kind of distinct visuals and complements, you know, Shakespeare's vivid use of words really, really well. Overall, this is a visually beautiful and well-presented version of the Shakespeare classic tale, with a modern twist and a very contemporary flavour, you know. Catch my breath. But I think ultimately it doesn't always work, don't get me wrong, but it's bold, it's different, and, you know, it's not kind of full of the starch and the dust that at least I sometimes associate with Shakespeare. You know, it has a great kind of captivating energy and indeed highlights just how darkly comic Shakespeare might have actually been. Intended or not, and I've been doing a bit of reading, and it does turn out that I think he added kind of this like dark and light kind of comedy elements in to kind of really do give the plays a bit of a twist. I think for his day, he was ahead of his time. My English teacher was so proud. Luhrmann does a good job at bringing the emotional requirement to explain the drastic action taken in the end by our two star-crossed lovers. From the point of view of the distress caused by the warring families, it just isn't as passionate as it needed to be, in my opinion, to merit such actions at the end, or to make us kind of believe that this indeed was the love for the ages, you know. But on the other hand, it doesn't seek to analyse, nor evaluate, nor preach, you know. Just simply entertain and bring another version of this story to life in the unique way that opens up such a fantastically creative work of or literary art for new generations to enjoy. And what could be wrong with that? So that brings me to the end of this episode, and many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. We have absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst Movie Talk. Definitely love to have you back. But most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.